All right, everybody, we are top of the hour. Thank you, Ion, for that. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Instagram. Come say hello to us if you are listening live. Let me check my Instagram feed. Hey, there I am. Looking good. Looking good on that. Is that everything? Have I done everything? You can hear me okay. Got the mic on. Sound is good on Facebook. Thank you for that, Ashley. Well, let's get out. While we're waiting for people to join us, I just got back from Mexico last week. Little holiday. Rarely happens, but I couldn't do the show from Mexico. That's where I was. But it was, even though I rarely get on holidays, it was amazing to be away, get some work done. I sat on the deck every day. I know you're not supposed to get some work done as a goal when you're on holidays, but I was able to sit on a deck every day in the sun and the warm and, do half-day works and rest up because I immediately got sick. I flew down there. The whole plane was sick. The whole resort was sick. The whole plane back was sick. And so I had a head cold. And so I had to sleep that off. And we'll see how I survive today because it's come back relentlessly this week. And we'll see how my throat lasts for the whole show. Little side story here as we're waiting for people. When I was in my 20s and starting my professional career, I used to work, say, 6 days a week, so like Monday to Saturday, and I'd get to the office late in downtown Toronto, call it, say, 9:30, and every day we'd work till 1, 2, 3 a.m., straight through, and then do that 6 days a week for years and years and years. And when I started my own business, Merchant Capital, my first entrepreneurial business in 1994, I was keeping that same workload and even doubling down. So at one point, for a couple of years, we were doing, me and a partner, probably 3 all-nighters a week, just working straight through, crashing in the office for an hour, keep going. And that's what it takes. That's what it takes when you are launching a business, you're a founder, you're trying to launch your professional career. That's the sort of work that you do. And when I carried that level of activity right into around 40 years of age, when I sold Merchant Capital at that point, and I took a year off. Well, that was the plan. It actually turned into 2 years. And what I learned heading into that through all that work is that your body, the level of activity and the stress is something that you don't realize on your body. And it's probably not very good for you. And so when I took time off, I took a year off, people say, hey, Scott, that must have been amazing. You were able to do that. And you were financially fortunate enough to be in that position. Did you go traveling? Did you do some stuff? Did you reconnect with this or that and the other thing? I'm like, no, man, like it was a lot just to lay on the couch. Like my big issue for the day during that year, almost 2 years, was should I get up and go to Starbucks at the end of my street? Seems like a lot of energy right now. And people say, hey, well, you must have wound down and felt yourself de-stressed and all that stuff. Nope, not at all. But here's what I did notice. Here's the point of the story. A couple of years later, I tried to go back to work. I launched what effectively has become Sinclair Range now, had different names. There's been mergers and all that sort of stuff. But I launched this business and I tried to go back to work and I could not. I was good for about 3 hours a day before I was exhausted. It took me a full year to be productive. And I'm not talking a 12, 16-hour a day productive. I'm talking an 8-hour a day productive, just a normal work day. It took me a full year to get my body to that and a couple of years longer to get to that 16, 18-hour work day. Now, I was older by that point. Of course, I wasn't in my 20s anymore, and that makes a difference. But what I really learned is to be productive, your body and mind need to be trained every day, like being an athlete. You can't just slack off for a quarter, then expect to start a new role and just like, okay, I'm gonna run the ultra marathon now. I'm gonna be the 4-minute mile person when you've been doing nothing and you haven't trained your body. That's what I learned from that lesson. We have this built up. Probably the right word is stress, but level of activity, level of productivity. You need to train that. If you're launching a business, if you're launching a career, you need to train your body and mind to do that. And I think that's why when you go on vacation, it's a universal rule. You go on vacation and immediately what happens? You let your guard down and you get sick. That's what happens. That's what happened to me. Let's see if we can get through the show. We've let people join us. Welcome, everybody, to the Week in Review at Sinclair Range. My name is Scott Sinclair. I'm founder and owner and president of Sinclair Range. And the mission here on this show, the goal is to provide you some insight into the inner workings at Sinclair Range. It's your window into real deals, decisions, day-to-day business challenges. And we try to do this in segments, lessons learned for the week, interesting file, deal of the week, struggles of the week, observations of the week. And don't forget, this show is about the journey of rebuilding Sinclair Range that we started maybe, I don't even remember now. Let's call it a year and a half ago. And after I came out of being ill for a little while and everything got to shit, and now we're rebuilding, and this is the journey. That's what this show is about. And now here we are. We are so busy. Just checking my Instagram. We are so busy. We have so many deals on the go. We just did a post called Deals on the Go on the Sinclair Range website, which you can go check out at sinclairrange.com. And I don't know if this is a comment on the state of the economy or our marketing efforts, or some sort of combination of the state of economy and our marketing efforts. I don't know, but we've got a lot going on, maybe more than we've ever had. And here's just a highlight of some of the transactions we're working on right now. You've heard about Serona Pharma. I can tell you this and drop the name because it is in court filings. It's a CCAA, which if you're a US listener, which is about half of our audience, that would be a Chapter 11 similar bankruptcy proceeding where you're reorganizing. In Canada, it's called the Company Creditors Arrangement Act, so CCAA. This is a cannabis producer. And here's the deal. So in 24, this company ran into financial difficulty. There you go. That's the coughing spurt that comes up while I've got this head cold. So in 24, they ran into financial difficulty. And like every other Canadian cannabis LP, by the way, that's just standard in the industry. If you've ever looked at this industry, if you've invested in it, you're not going to be surprised by that. But they were in financial difficulty, too much debt, unpaid excise taxes, all that sort of stuff. They ran into growing issues. They had their license suspended from Health Canada, so now their cultivation license has been suspended. This is back in 24. And so long story short, in 25, I don't have the exact date in front of me, but call it October-ish of 2025, the company files for protection, CCAA, and the express purpose of this protection is to just calmly put a pause to everything so that you can clean up and reorganize and move forward with production in this fabulous plant. This plant is 130,000 square feet. It's the largest indoor grow facility in Canada. I'm not talking about greenhouse indoor grow. I'm talking about an actual building, climate controlled, humidity controlled, cross-contamination controlled, all that sort of stuff. There's over 30 grow rooms in this facility. It is state of the art. I think it's the second largest in the world, actually, for this. It's really a cool property, a cool 3 buildings on, I think, 30 plus acres. And so the point of the CCAA is to put a pause to everything, to be able to restructure the balance sheet so you get rid of the debt and get the license done. And to get the license done, you have to go through a remediation plan. They call it a CAPA in the industry, and a corrective action plan, I believe, is what that acronym stands for. And so that's all done. They should have their license, if all goes well, next month, like in a few weeks here. And that is fantastic. And then they're able to get back to business. And then you exit the CCAA by making a plan to your creditors. And basically the company and its financial investors end up with, very, very little debt, depending on how much they bid and provide finance, at what valuation they provide the financing to the company. So that's very cool. That's the general essence of it. And so when you do this sort of deal, you need to have what's called a debtor in possession loan, DIP, DIP. And that has been provided, I've told you on this channel a few times, from Sapphire Global Finance, of which Sinclair Range is an advisor. And the debtor in possession loan is, don't hold me to the number, 2.3 right now, maybe 2.5 all in. And the use of proceeds on that has been to fund some of this this CAPA, the professionals, the process itself of the CCAA. And so it's taken what was chaos in a real difficult mess, and we're now in a position with this company where it's on the verge of moving forward and starting to generate real income and value for its owners. So that's an amazing deal that we're on. And so now the next stage of this transaction is to take out the debtor in possession loan to fund the working capital and the exit from the CCAA. You can see that on our website, sinclairrange.com, but that's been an all-encompassing transaction that we're heavy in marketing right now. We're also working a lot on, I've told you about this private credit pitch in Canada. I gave it again just this morning. And this is the pitch. In Canada, first of all, private credit is an asset class in the US, if you look at it, that is attracting trillions of dollars of capital, a lot of it coming out of private equity and moving into, excuse me one second here, moving into private credit, which is basically bank style loans to businesses. And some of that is for very large cap, which we don't need to talk about because it's not our market here, but mid-market and smaller businesses. And in Canada, what's going on is you have about $1 billion and a half hole of just an absence of capital. And the reason is because a number of private providers of private credit, firms that have dominated the marketplace, they've all blown up. And predominantly, why have they blown up? I mean, there's all sorts of nuance and different reasons. But one big reason is structurally, they bring their money in, you know, XYZ Capital brings its money in to lend out to small businesses from what they call the retail market. So you and me, you could buy this in your mutual fund, in your IRA, in your RSP. You could buy this. And when you do that, you have this, you have expected liquidity. In other words, you can say, well, it's part of my mutual fund, but now I want to get my cash out of this product and put it into a different product. And so, you know, you redeem your mutual fund unit if you're a holder of that, and 3 days later, you know, they're supposed to give you the cash. Except you've got this fully liquid inside of the capital, and the outside of the capital, which is the loans to other businesses. You can issue, say, a 12-month term loan or revolving loan, an asset-based loan to a borrower, but you're not going to collect that back in 12 months. You're going to get it in 18 months. And so the inside of your capital comes in, you know, is liquid every day pretty much, and the outside isn't. So like the investments are not liquid. And so if the market's going great and there's lots of money flowing into this asset class from retail investors, it's all awesome. But the minute that equation reverses, which it has, now all of a sudden you've got liquidity that you need to fund with illiquid assets. It's a common problem in finance, and that's certainly what's happened in Canada. And so these firms are wiped out, and you have this billion and a half hole in the Canadian marketplace. If you are a mid-market manufacturing company in this country of Canada, I know we're a diverse global audience. I'm sorry I'm picking on the Canadian marketplace today, but this is the deal we're working on. If you are that borrower and you're not fitting within the bank's box for whatever reason, there's very few options left. Very few options in this country. What you probably have to do is borrow from the US. It's more complicated. You don't know the distribution channel. It's hard to get the deal done. The rates are different. Everything's a little bit different about it. And so there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity for real money to come into this space. And we have created a vehicle where we're raising $100 million plus to fill that hole. And that's another deal that we are working on. You can join in on that, by the way. Go to the Sinclair Range website. Reach out to us in the show notes. We're happy to talk about it. We have a client, another deal we're working on. I have a client that is executed its security. It is a private lender on a farming transportation company outside of Winnipeg, and we have a bunch of trailers that we're trying to liquidate. They've been posted on Facebook and Kijiji and on our regular distributions. They are also on our website. So we're doing that. We've got a deal in the automotive sector where we are, I've talked about this on the show before. We're trying to buy out the current lender at a discount and restructure this company and work together with the ownership team to grow and create real value there. So we're busy. You know, we're talking about deals on the go. It has been a hell of a first quarter. There's a lot more than that, but that's just an example for you. And and we've learned some lessons. When I do that learned lesson segment, it's more reminders of lessons that I always know already. But sometimes you forget. Even I'm the guy that creates the content for you and writes the book, which you haven't seen yet, but you will be. But even as you're in the middle, you go, oh, yeah, I remember this particular lesson. And one of the lessons that I have in turnarounds, and I've published this everywhere, and I talk about it as much as I can, is that the very first rule of fixing your business, of getting out of very difficult situations, this applies to non-business situations as well, by the way, but the very first rule is you have to admit that you're in trouble. Some would call that rock bottom. I see it as just a framing. It's a different frame of the situation where you're moving from the frame of, I'm a victim, I'm just going through a bad patch. You need to change out of that frame to, I'm screwed, I'm completely in trouble. And when you do that, if you can change your framing, that if I don't make change, that we're just toast. If you can change your framing to that, every tough decision just becomes easy. You move into triage mode, and it's easy to make the right decisions. And if you think about it, that's really the purpose of this show. When I came out of being ill, whenever we started this show, a year and a half ago or whatever it was, it was clear that we were in trouble at Sinclair Range because I was gone for an extended period of time, 7 months, 9 months, whatever. I was trying to work and not really working, so it's hard to put a time frame on it. But that's what this show is about, is resurrecting. And the first step to that is to say, oh, well, we need to start making some hard decisions, moving quickly, and going back to first principles. And what are first principles in this situation? First principles are always, in this context, value. What is the value of my business today if I am in trouble? Okay. What is my business worth to each stakeholder of the business, not just the shareholders? If you're the founder, owner, manager, what is this business worth to the bank? For example, so if you're a senior lender, if you're a bank to a small or mid-market manufacturing company, you've demanded on your loan, you have first secured over all the assets, you want all your money back, but the borrower is not paying you. What do you need to understand? First and foremost, you need to understand value, the first principle. Okay, if I have to act on my security in a way consistent with whatever jurisdiction the borrower is in, let's assume it's a Canadian situation, you want to put in a receiver, what is the liquidation value net of all those fees? That is the baseline information. And if you don't have that, how can you negotiate? How can you make a decision? They call it sharpening the pencils. Let's take a hard look at what we're really going to get out of this thing and do a liquidation analysis. So if you're the borrower, you need to understand that as well, because your counterparty, whom you're going to negotiate with or battle with or have some sort of friendly discussion with, they're going to want to understand that information, and best that you're all on the same page. If you both have a different view of liquidation value, it's not going to go very well, right? So this week we've worked on liquidation values for a couple of clients that we send to the bank, because the bank's requested us to do that for our clients, and they're able to take a look at the schedule, make their own decision. What does a liquidation analysis look like? You just simply on a spreadsheet list in one column the assets: cash, accounts receivable, inventory, prepaid expenses, equipment, real estate if there is some, and then you list the relevant creditors in order of priority. And if the bank is going to take a haircut, then it's only the bank that matters. It's the priority claims, being in Canada, CRA, withholdings, and then the bank, and that's pretty much it. And you take off first from the gross assets, you would take off the costs of the receivership, being probably 10% or somewhere in that range is a good estimate. So you take your receivable, your cash, obviously 100 cents on the dollar. You apply a margin to every asset. Receivables, maybe 80%, maybe 60%, depends on the industry. Inventory, you're probably going to get very, very little, depending on the industry. In a pure auction blowout, you would think maybe 20 cents on the dollar in some cases. Your equipment could be equal to book value. It could be way less than book value. In some cases, it could be more than book value, right? So you need to have an understanding of equipment in the market. Now, we did one in automotive this week, and in the automotive sector, there's not a lot of secondary market for used automotive manufacturing equipment, and so you end up with a pretty low number. And then you, like I said, you take off the fees and you deduct that. You end up with your net assets at liquidation value, and say they're $1 million and the bank's owed $2 million. Well, the bank's going to realize a 50% haircut, right? That's a liquidation schedule, just so you understand that. So we've been working on those this week, and the point of the story is that when you're trying to get out of a hole, you need a starting point, and your starting point, your first principles, 100% of the time, is value. So focus on that. Just checking my Instagram here. And so focus on that as a starting point all the time. And speaking of value, speaking of first principles, when we're working on the Sinclair Range turnaround, we've had, I think I told you this sort of day one, but at Sinclair Range, we own two significant pieces of real estate. Combined, you're looking at probably over 8 figures of value in the marketplace. And as you recall, when we were sketching out how are we going to get out of the mess that we had here at Sinclair Range, well, we had a bunch of illiquid assets, which included this real estate. And on the other side, we have a bunch of accrued liabilities, which people kind of want to get paid now. And the assets are more than the liabilities. Good problem. But you've got just like those private debt funds that I talked about, you have this mismatch of liquidity. People want to be paid now. I got assets I can't pay them that aren't liquid. So we don't have the cash. That's where we were like a year and a half ago. So obviously we've been trying to sell this real estate, and it hasn't sold yet. It hasn't sold yet. Excuse me. Now, on the flip side, on the good side, the services, which were pretty much dead when I got back to work a year and a half ago, have been going fantastic. So that creates current cash flow. And it's interesting that no matter what your best plans are in a turnaround, something different always happens, and you have to be flexible. So we've been trying to sell both these pieces of real estate, and I don't know what's going on, if it's the market, if it's they're not both pieces of real estate have some hair on it. Let's put it this way. So we're running into rogue purchasers. And we had one guy on an industrial property who, one piece is raw land that could be used for development. Another piece is a industrial building with a little bit of land around it. And we were under firm contract, and they refused to close. And they refused to close for reasons that don't make any sense. They thought they were going to inherit all the manufacturing equipment with the deal. I don't want to talk too much about it, but that's just a nuts position. I don't want to talk too much about it because we are in litigation on this right now, because they didn't close when they were supposed to close. They've put no work into this, and then they're able to put a lien on title, which means that we can't relist it and sell it to somebody else, even though there's lots of buyers on the raw land, which is called Rosalind Acres. We own these outright, so I can drop names. It's not a problem. We were under conditional contract on this one, and as they were extending out because they needed more time to do their due diligence, the prospective purchaser, snuck into the deal a clause which said that basically they could just extend the conditional offer forever, unilaterally, anytime they want, basically is what it said. And so I had to, and they try to sneak it into a Docusign. And these Docusigns are death, absolute death, because you go to look at them, and you can't really see everything on your screen. Some people are doing them on the phone. I don't do that. But even on your computer, on your laptop, it's just hard to see everything. And so they sneak these conditions in. Fortunately, we did not accept that condition. But unlike the industrial building, which is in litigation, I got in front of this from a legal point of view, and there was threatening demand letters, and we got a release signed off. So we're rid of this prospective purchaser, and we don't have that issue anymore. But 2 lessons learned from these struggles. And the number one lesson is Things never go as planned in a turnaround. Sometimes the things that you're worrying about, in our case, services and cash flow, just turn around really quickly and they're working great. And you're working your way out of your problem and having some actual tremendous success as a result. Whereas the ideas that you had, which resolve everything, sell these assets, take the cash, pay all the debt, you got a bunch of money left over, use that to reinvest into the real business, takes longer than you think, and you run into these troubles. So that's always, you need to be flexible and you need to have multiple plans of action. That's my rule of thumb. And the second lesson coming out of this struggle for the week is Docusign. It's just death when you are using it to negotiate offers. You should not use Docusign to negotiate and sign stuff back and forth. This is a disaster. Just stop, print it out, try to understand, read everything carefully. You know what I'm doing now? I'm taking the DocuSigns that are sent to me for signature, I'm downloading them and I'm feeding them through AI, and I'm saying, hey, what's going on here? Do you see anything hidden in here that I'm missing? Here's the intent. And that helps me read through that stuff safely and quickly. And speaking of AI, I think I've talked to you about Claude before, my love affair with this new coworker, I think it's called. Is that what it's called? I think so. Let me take a look here for you. Cowork, it's called. They have a couple of different functions here within Claude. Getting back to my notes. And so Claude has basically taken over Sinclair Range at this point. It's insane, the productivity that is coming out of this thing and through Cowork. So I asked it to tell me, in the last 2 weeks, Claude, what have I used you for? To give me a massive bullet pointed list. Here's some of them. Structuring and drafting multi-party investment agreements for a new venture. So I'm telling you this because if you are a business owner or even a professional and you are not using these sorts of tools to enhance your productivity, to speed up the pace of business, you're just going to lose. I am not legal counsel. We have no lawyers at Sinclair Range, but we are now able, with this technology, to spit out some pretty good agreements, which we can then send to legal counsel for a review. And you should always do that. I'm not telling you not to use lawyers. But you can send them out in a term sheet form, in a contract form, say, this is what we're thinking. How do we amend this? How do we shorten this cycle and lessen the fees on doing a particular deal in a transaction through the use of this technology? So it's fantastic. Now I have an advantage. I told you this, I think 2 weeks ago on our show when we were talking about valuation reports that are being done by Claude. For me, I know what the answer should be. So I'm able to read it and assess, yes or no, you made a mistake here, you should go do that. I know what questions to ask it. I know how to direct it, right? So you can't just be a novice at writing a contract, for example, and get a decent answer. So just be aware of that. Prepared refinancing a capital raise document for an investor audience. So look, we did a pitch on the Inner Circle yesterday. You know, the Inner Circle deals in capital. This is our regular private group where we talk about deals and business issues, and you can reach out in the notes and you could be invited to join that group. But I did a pitch on the cannabis company that I told you about earlier in this show, and I needed a deck. I didn't have a talking deck. Well, I was able, through Claude, to give it access to all of the folders. It created the deck. I asked some questions, said, hey, change this, change that. I was done. It was done in 15, 20 minutes. It's amazing what this thing does, including financial slides, by the way, and projections. Okay. Remember, AI used to not be able to do the math part? Well, this one certainly does. The liquidation analysis, it did all that. Again, I know enough to ask the questions. Yield on a private credit portfolio that we are trying to buy. Reviewing contract, that's a reference to the Docusign that we talked about. Drafting termination notices, that's to the Roslyn prospective purchaser I needed a release from. We did all that through Claude. Rewriting commercial agreements, organizing litigation files. I can give this AI access to our full server, which is kind of scary, my full Gmail account, so it can go through hundreds of thousands of emails, my text messages, and my WhatsApp messages with a little work, and it can review all of that for a litigation to give you backup data, and it just cranks away at it for half an hour, and gives you a list of everything. It's fantastic. I don't know how you would ever work without it in a litigation where you need to go through such volumes of data these days. So that's amazing. It's written engagement letters, strategic memorandums for wealth management clients, data room checklists. It's done. Here's a new one. I set up in a folder 2 years of multiple credit cards that I have, debit statements that I have, and it just did full expense reports by company for the whole thing. It just, and then it sets up a reminder and said, hey, let's do some more of this, or do you have questions about how should I allocate that expense? All done. Sent it to our controller to be checked, and it was done properly. She had a few minor points, but not much. You want to know something crazy? I was having a cigar and a glass of wine on the deck earlier this week, even though I'm sick. And I thought, I know what I should try and do on this Claude AI. It built a CRM system. I have a full CRM system for Sinclair Range. Got all of my contacts in there, and it now monitors my emails every day, and sets up to-dos, marks activity. it's a full functioning CRM that's better, in my view, for my size of company than Salesforce. And Salesforce, I don't even know what we were paying them, but it was $3,000, $5,000 a month. It was some crazy amount of money. This is all free, and it's just as good. I don't like, how does a company like Salesforce or a software provider providing a service, I don't know how they last through this. And so this is just an example of some of the things that we have been using Claude AI for, and the co-work future. I can't talk enough about it. It is blowing away our productivity and our ability to service our clients. I love it. And what's the point of all that? The world is changing. Keep up. All right. That's gone a little bit over time. Thank you for listening today. I'm sorry that you had to put up with my broken voice and sore throat. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for reaching out. If you are a company in transition, if you're high growth, if you're financially distressed, we are the ones to talk to in any country. Come and do that, and we will talk to you next week.